Welcome back to the deep end.
It is good to be back.
So before we turn the lights down and get into the really good stuff today, and I mean the really good, slightly spine-tingling stuff, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do.
Yeah, just to sort of set the stage. A mission statement, if you will.
Exactly. So today we are looking at a very, very specific moment in time.
We are. We're diving into session 116 of the early sessions, book 3 of the Seth material.
Recorded on, and this is important, December 24th, 1964.
Yes. And just so everyone is on the same page, we want to declare right up front that this deep dive is, of course, distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Absolutely. We're here to learn, to explore, to share. And we have to give credit where credit is definitively due.
Yeah.
The material we are unpacking today comes directly from the Seth material.
And its publisher, the New Awareness Network, they're the ones who keep this work available.
And honestly, if you find yourself intrigued by what we talk about today, and I have a feeling you will, given where this one goes, we strongly encourage you to go straight to the source.
No, absolutely. Study the Seth material books yourself. You can find them and visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com/the-early sessions.
Seriously, go check it out. We're just the guides here. The books are the actual territory.
Okay.
Housekeeping done. You ready to travel back in time?
I am so ready.
Okay, let's set the scene. It is Monday, December 21st, 1964. It's 9 p.m. Now, usually when we talk about this material, we don't worry too much about the calendar date. But does that date ring a bell for you, December 21st?
It does. I mean, that's the winter solstice.
The longest night of the year.
It is the darkest point of the year. Historically, it's always been associated with, turning inward, with reflection. It's the death of the old year and the birth of the new sun. It's a very atmospheric night for a session.
It's the perfect night for a ghost story, or in this case, a consciousness story. So picture this living room in Elmira, New York. You've got Jane Roberts, or Ruburt, her husband, Robert Butts, Joseph. And usually the vibe is, well, it's energetic. Jane is up. She's pacing. She's smoking. She's dictating in that booming Seth voice.
Right. That pacing is such a huge part of the ritual up to this point. It's almost athletic. She's marching back and forth across the room, burning off energy.
But tonight is different.
Very different.
Tonight, the room is quiet. Tonight, Jane isn't pacing.
And that's the hook. That is why this specific session, session 116, is such a massive pivot point in the entire material.
She is sitting still.
Sitting still, eyes closed.
It sounds so simple, so mundane when you say it like that. Woman sits in the chair.
But in the context of what they had been doing for over a year at this point, this was radical.
It was a huge experiment. And I think to really understand why this matters so much, we have to look at what happened before the clock struck 9. Let's unpack the pregame show here. So Jane's having supper. It's a normal Monday. She's reading over the notes from the previous session, last Wednesday's. And then, just out of the blue, she gets this idea.
It's an intuition, really. It's just a thought that pops into her head.
She thinks, hey, maybe I should lie down for part of the session tonight.
Which seems harmless enough. Relaxed, even.
Right. I mean, who doesn't want to lie down after supper? Her first thought is, sure, sounds good. Acquiescence. But then, immediately after that,
panic.
Full-on panic.
She freaks out. And the question is why? What is so terrifying about lying down?
It's all about control, or more specifically, it's about the loss of time. The source text says her second thought was one of panic because she wouldn't know the passage of time as usual.
That is so fascinating to me, because we don't usually think about how much we rely on time as a kind of safety blanket.
It's the ultimate container. We use time to structure our reality. If you take away the clock, if you take away the ability to check your watch or even see the sun move, you're just floating in a void. And for Jane, entering a trance state is already stepping out of normal reality. The pacing, the physical movement, that was her way of keeping one foot in the physical world.
It's an anchor, a physical anchor.
So if she lies down, closes her eyes, and stops moving.
She cuts the anchor line. She's completely adrift. And that's terrifying.
And there's this really cool synchronicity happening at the exact same moment, too. While Jane is having this little meltdown about lying down, what is Robert doing?
This is one of those little details that you could so easily miss if you're reading too fast. Robert is in another room, separated by 2 rooms, actually, and he's working on an index for session 35 from way back in March of that year.
And what was session 35 about?
In that session, Seth had specifically talked about having them try various experiments involving the use of the inner senses.
So Robert is literally indexing a prediction about these kinds of experiment at the exact moment. Jane is intuitively receiving the command to start one.
And neither of them knew what the other was doing. They were completely separate.
That's the kind of stuff that just gives me goosebumps. It's like the whole system was syncing up, preparing for the next step.
It really suggests a level of orchestration behind the scenes, that the energy of the sessions itself was pushing for this evolution.
So 8:15 p.m. rolls around. Jane decides, okay, let's test the waters. She lies down.
And she notices an immediate shift. A real palpable difference. She feels she goes into a deeper trance state. She describes it as experimental and yet controlled.
But here's the kicker. She doesn't see anything. She doesn't hear anything. She says she doesn't even feel Seth around.
Which is so interesting, isn't it? Because usually the presence is the signal that things are starting. Here the signal is an absence. It's just quiet. But she notes her arms felt light.
Light arms. That's a classic sign of dissociation or, a shift in consciousness. But she's worried. She's lying there thinking, if I go this deep, how do I control the material? How do I stop it if it gets scary?
And that is the central tension of this whole session. It's the tension between the desire to explore the unknown and the very human need to stay in the driver's seat.
So 9 p.m. strikes. Showtime.
And the ritual completely changes.
She's sitting at the table opposite Robert. She takes off her glasses. That part's standard. But instead of getting up and starting to pace the floorboards, she just stays in the chair.
Eyes closed.
Eyes closed.
Hmm.
And she assumes this very specific posture. One leg drawn up, her arm resting on her knee, and her hand propping up her head.
It's a very contemplative pose, almost like Rodin's The Thinker, but, more relaxed.
And of course, there's a lit cigarette in her other hand.
You can never forget the cigarette. It's such a part of the early sessions.
It adds such a noir vibe to the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is 1964, smoke is swirling, winter solstice darkness outside, and she starts to speak.
And the voice is different. The notes say it's normal in volume, but the delivery is rapid yet filled with these long, long pauses.
Let's get into what Seth actually says right off the bat, because he doesn't waste any time. He addresses the change immediately.
No, he dives right in. He says, we may possibly this evening try something not drastic in the way of a small experiment.
Not drastic. Famous last words, right?
He's trying to reassure them. He explains that the goal is to speak concerning the ego's censorship.
The ego's censorship. This is a huge, huge concept in this material.
It is. And it's important to think of the ego not as a bad thing, but as a filter, a necessary gatekeeper.
I always picture a bouncer at a club. Big guy, arms crossed.
That is a perfect analogy. The ego is the bouncer. Its job is to keep the riffraff out. It wants to maintain order, consistency, and above all, safety. It checks IDs.
So if an idea comes up from the subconscious that seems too weird or too scary, or it contradicts your physical reality.
The bouncer says, nope, you're not on the list. You're not getting in.
So Seth is saying, we need to find a way to sneak past the bouncer.
Or at least distract the bouncer by removing the physical props, the pacing, the open eyes. They're lowering the ego's defenses. They are attempting to bypass the censorship to get cleaner data.
But Jane's ego is terrified. She thinks if the bouncer leaves the door, total chaos will ensue.
Which is precisely why Seth immediately introduces a safety mechanism, a kind of psychological kill switch.
I love this part. It's so practical, so thoughtful.
It is. Seth addresses Robert directly. He gives him a very specific phrase. He says, for future reference, Joseph, the words, all right, Jane, you're back now, will always suffice to return Ruburt to his more usual condition.
All right, Jane, you're back now. 7 words.
Simple. Declarative, no ambiguity.
But why does that work? Why do they need what sounds like a magic spell?
Well, it isn't magic, not really. It's psychological programming. It's all about trust. Seth explicitly says, this procedure and your consent will give Ruburt a feeling of trust without which I do not believe he would otherwise proceed.
So Jane, on some level, needs to know that Robert has the power to pull her out if things get too intense.
Exactly. Think of it this way. If she knows there is a rope tied around her waist and Robert is holding the other end, she's willing to jump off the cliff into the unknown. If there's no rope, she won't jump. She can't.
That makes total sense. It allows her to let go of control because she has, in a way, outsourced the control to Robert.
Precisely. It becomes a shared burden. Seth even says, the situations and conditions will not be out of your hands at any time. He's reassuring the conscious mind that it hasn't been hijacked.
Okay, but what about Robert? He's the one holding the rope. How does he feel about all this?
Well, in the moment during the session when Seth asks if he consents, Robert just says yes.
Short and sweet.
But in his notes, and this is why the notes are so incredibly valuable, Robert admits that he gave that answer almost as a matter of routine, just going along with it.
He was on autopilot.
He was. He reflects later that he wasn't actually sure. He says their approach is cautious, as usual. He didn't want to push Jane into anything she didn't want to do, you know?
It's such a delicate dance, isn't it? They really are partners in this exploration. They're both standing on the edge of this completely unknown territory, holding hands, both a little scared, but both really, really curious.
And you have to remember, this is 1964. There is no roadmap for this. There's no one to call for advice. They are literally drawing the map as they walk it.
So the experiment begins. Jane is sitting there, eyes closed. And Seth starts talking about why Jane usually paces.
And this is a fascinating bit of, well, psychoanalysis from Seth. He breaks down the props she's been using.
He calls them props that are basically unimportant, but practically extremely convenient. Love that phrasing.
He mentions pickets of minutes.
Fenced in from each other by pickets of minutes. That is such a poetic, beautiful line.
It is, isn't it? He's saying that clock time is a prop Jane relies on to feel safe. It structures experience into manageable chunks.
And the pacing. What about the pacing?
This part is deep. Seth says the pacing is a symbol of her insistence that she stay on her feet. And he says this relates directly to her invalid mother.
Oh, wow. So, because her mother was bedridden for so long.
Jane has this subconscious drive to prove that she is mobile, active, and in control of her body. Standing up and walking is a defiance of her mother's condition. It's a statement, I am not her.
So sitting down to channel isn't just a physical change, it's challenging a really deep-seated psychological defense mechanism.
Correct. Seth is essentially saying, you don't need to pace to prove you're okay. You can be still and you will still be safe.
That is heavy.
It is. And it shows how deeply intertwined our physical actions are with our psychological history.
Yeah.
Nothing we do is ever really accidental.
So while Seth is explaining all of this really profound stuff, there's this moment described in the notes that I just find so cinematic and so human.
The ashtray.
The ashtray. Jane's eyes are completely closed. She's channeling this incredible wisdom about time and consciousness and family history. And meanwhile, her cigarette has burned all the way down to the filter.
And she's got to put it out.
But she can't see. So she's groping around the table blindly, trying to mash this cigarette butt into the ashtray, all while Seth's voice keeps talking.
It's the perfect collision of the mystical and the mundane, isn't it? It just grounds the whole experience. It reminds you that this is happening in a real living room with real physical consequences, like, burning your fingers or the table.
It's both chilling and really funny at the same time.
It also demonstrates the split in her consciousness. Part of her is navigating the physical world purely by touch, totally on instinct, while another part of her is transmitting data from a completely different reality.
Let's talk about the data she transmits next, because after explaining the props, Seth gets into some really, really trippy stuff about energy and what he calls mental enclosures.
He does. He starts talking about how energy renews itself, how it's not a finite resource.
He uses a clever play on words here that I love. He talks about parent, not apparent energy.
Parent, not apparent. P-A-R-E-N-T. It's brilliant.
What does that mean to you? How do you unpack that?
Well, apparent energy is what we see. The physical world. Movement, heat, light, the results. But parent energy is the source. The invisible inner reservoir that gives birth to the physical. It's the cause, not the effect.
So the parent energy is the hidden fuel that runs everything.
Exactly. And Seth says, fragments of this type have all the potentialities of the parent inner energy, therefore they constantly create energy.
So he's saying we aren't just batteries that run down. We are constant generators.
We are self-replenishing systems because we are always connected to that source. He says no energy is lost, no energy is meaningless.
And then he drops this image that, for me, is the absolute highlight of the session. He compares the dream universe and the physical universe.
The twin fires.
Yes. The quote is, these actions burn almost like twin fires in different worlds, but they illuminate vastly different landscapes.
It's just a beautiful and haunting image. So evocative.
It really is. Twin fires. It's not one fire that you move from room to room. It's two burning simultaneously.
And it suggests that our waking life and our dream life are powered by the exact same fuel, that parent energy. They are just burning in different dimensions.
Illuminating different landscapes. So when you dream, you aren't off.
Yeah.
You're just shining the flashlight in a different direction.
And you're performing mental actions in both. Seth says mental actions in both universes are camouflage acting symbols for interaction.
Okay, camouflage acting symbols. Let's break that down.
It means that what you do in a dream, say you're flying or you're running from a monster, that's a symbol for an inner energetic event. But, and this is the key, what you do in waking life, like driving to work or having an argument, that is also a symbol.
Wait, so my commute to work is a symbol.
In Seth's view, absolutely. The physical world is just as symbolic as the dream world. They're both representations of deeper, inner, energetic truths. We just take the physical one more seriously because it seems more solid.
Because of the pickets of minutes.
Exactly. Because of the props. We've built a more convincing stage set in this reality.
Man, that puts a whole new spin on the idea of reality.
It dissolves the barrier between real and imaginary. They're both real. They are twin fires.
Okay, so while Seth is dropping these massive truth bombs, Jane is physically struggling. The delivery is described as halting.
Very halting. Ruburt notes in the text that she would take pauses that were so long he thought she'd just fallen asleep.
5 minutes to deliver 2 paragraphs. That is just agonizingly slow.
But the diction is perfectly clear. And Ruburt notes that when he types it all up later, it reads just as well as the fast-paced material.
So the signal is clean, but the bandwidth is, what, throttled?
I wouldn't say throttled, I'd say maybe. Filtered through a thicker medium. Because she's in a deeper trance, the translation process is taking more time in our world, even though it might feel instantaneous to her. She's reaching deeper into the well, so the bucket takes longer to pull up.
And then suddenly Seth says, I suggest you break, not into pieces, and that Ruburt now snapped back to himself.
You gotta love the classic Seth humor. Break, not into pieces.
And just like that, snap, the first part of the session ends. 9:45 p.m. Jane's eyes fly open.
And her head comes up immediately. She's back.
What's her reaction? How does she feel?
She's groggy. She looks sleepy. She immediately reaches for her glasses, trying to ground herself.
Does she remember any of it?
She says she was way out. She remembers hearing her own voice, and she remembers hearing Robert's answers, but she was completely surprised at how much time had passed.
The time distortion again.
Yes. She remembered the pauses, but to her, she said they felt like nothing. To her, the flow of information was continuous. To Ruburt, sitting there were these huge gaps of silence.
That in itself is kind of scary.
It is. It's that loss of continuity. And Jane realizes something really important here. She tells Ruburt that this new method makes it much harder for her to block material.
Why is that?
Well, when she's up and pacing, she has a rhythm. She can almost see the words coming. If something feels too frightening or too weird, she has a split second to put up a wall.
The bouncer can step in and say, nope.
Right. But with this deep, slow trance and these long, unpredictable pauses, the pauses interrupt the sense of the material for her. She can't see the end of the sentence before she starts speaking it.
She's walking completely in the dark.
She is defenseless against the information. It just bubbles up out of the silence. This makes blocking more difficult, which is, of course, exactly what Seth wanted.
To bypass the censorship.
But for Jane, that means being vulnerable to whatever comes through, good or bad.
And later in the session, they resume at 9:59 p.m., Seth actually addresses this whole issue of distortion.
He does. He wants to reassure them about the messiness of this new method. He knows it feels less controlled.
There is a quote here I really want to read because it's so forgiving. Seth says, as long as our attempts are completely honest, above board, there is no more disgrace in any distortion of message than there is in a like distortion in usual communication, such as the misreading of a letter.
I love that line, the misreading of a letter.
It just takes all the pressure off, doesn't it?
It completely normalizes the supernatural. He's saying, look, even when you talk to your neighbor, you misunderstand each other. You mishear words. You project your own meaning onto what they say. Why should communicating with an energy personality essence be any different?
So perfection isn't required, just honesty.
Above board. That's the key word. As long as the intent is pure, the distortion doesn't matter. It's just static on the line. The core message gets through.
That must have been a huge relief for Jane. Because you read in the notes all the time how she was always worried about faking it or coloring the material with her own subconscious stuff.
That anxiety about authenticity is a major theme for her throughout the early years. And here Seth is telling her, relax, even if you distort it a little, it's not a sin, it's just mechanics.
So the session finally wraps up. Seth gives his fondest wishes. Ruburt may return now.
And Jane comes back again. The notes say she was fully dissociated, not even aware of the darkness or light in the room.
And she had this weird perception while she was delivering that last paragraph. She felt that Seth meant she might start receiving visual data while dictating.
A bit of foreshadowing.
And this brings us to the part of the deep dive that Honestly, it gives me the shivers. The psi time notes.
The aftermath. What happens after the session ends?
So the session was December 21st, but the experiment didn't just stop when the session ended. The door had been opened a little wider.
And when you remove the props, when you tell the bouncer to take a coffee break, you don't just get Seth. You get other things too.
Let's look at the note from December 28th. A week later, it's a Monday morning, 11:30 a.m. Jane is doing her psi time, her psychological time exercise.
And she sees eyes.
Not just any eyes. Describe them for us.
The note says, I saw a pair of eyes close to me, looking straight at me. They were moist and very dark, wet, but not soft. They were not human eyes, yet did not appear to be animal either.
Okay, moist and very dark, wet, but not soft. That is officially creepy.
It's so visceral. It's not a cartoon ghost. It's biological. Moist, wet.
And looking straight at me.
Oh.
It's observing her. There's an intelligence there.
This is what happens when you stare into the abyss for long enough. Sometimes something stares back.
What do you think that was? I mean, what could that possibly be?
We can only speculate, of course. But remember the twin fires. She's looking into the other landscape. She is seeing an inhabitant of that other energy field. It might be a symbolic representation of a part of herself, or it might be something else entirely.
Something parent, not apparent.
Exactly.
Then on December 29th, the next day, she feels a sensation of rising, of levitation.
Suspension and lightness, a classic out-of-body sensation. The anchor is loose.
And on December 30th, voices.
Yeah, conversational voices, like a radio being tuned in.
She thinks she hears Dick Roberts, who's an editor at Dell Publishing.
And he's talking about going to California for a publishing firm.
Now, this is so interesting because it's so mundane. It's not angels singing or demons whispering. It's an editor talking about a business trip.
And that's often how clairvoyance works, especially in these early stages. It just picks up on the radio waves of other people's strong thoughts. It's random snippets of information floating in the ether.
But it shows that by removing the pickets of minutes and the control of pacing, she didn't just deepen the channel to Seth, she widened the receiver for everything.
She took the filter off the lens. And suddenly, all the background noise, the eyes, the voices, the physical sensations, all of it became visible.
It must have been overwhelming.
It must have been, which brings us right back to why they needed the safety word, why they needed that foundation of trust.
Because without that tether...
Without that tether, you could get lost in the noise. You could get fixated on the moist, dark eyes and completely forget your way back to the living room with the burning cigarette.
It really was an incredibly brave thing they did.
It was. They pushed the boundaries of their own consciousness on a dark Monday night in 1964 with no idea what they would find.
And they did it for us. Or, well, for the pursuit of knowledge.
And because the energy itself, that parent energy, demanded to be known, it wanted to be explored.
So let's synthesize this. What's the big takeaway from session 116?
For me, the core lesson is about trust and the removal of props.
How so?
We all have our props. We all have our own version of pacing. Maybe it's checking your phone constantly. Maybe it's over-planning your day down to the second. Maybe it's the way you define yourself by your job title.
The picket fence of minutes.
Right. We use these things to feel safe, to feel in control, to prove to ourselves that we are standing on our own 2 feet.
But what Seth is saying here is...
Seth is saying that real insight, real connection to that parent energy requires you to sit still, to close your eyes, to let go of the props.
To risk the panic.
To risk the panic of not knowing what time it is, to trust that if you let go, you won't fall forever, you'll just float.
And that there's a safety net.
All right, Jane, you're back now. We all need to find that phrase for ourselves, that anchor, that person, that belief that allows us to explore the deep end but still come home.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's the balance of exploration and grounding. The twin fires, you have to tend both of them.
I love that. You know, I'm actually going to try it tonight. Maybe not the channeling part, but just sitting still for 10 minutes. No phone, no clock. Just see what happens.
Just watch out for the moist eyes.
Hey, don't scare me off before I even start.
I'm just kidding. Or am I?
You're the worst. But seriously, this has been a really fascinating look at such a pivotal moment in the Seth material.
It really establishes the foundation for everything that comes later. This deeper trance state allowed for the more complex books. The nature of personal reality Seth speaks to eventually come through. They had to learn how to swim in the deep end first.
And session 116 was the first real diving lesson.
It was. It really was.
Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought, a little homework assignment, if you will.
Let's hear it.
We talked a lot about the twin fires, This idea that your waking life and your dream life are burning from the exact same energy source. So, tonight, when you go to sleep, maybe just ask yourself, what are you doing in that other landscape? What fuel are you burning over there that is powering your life right here?
And maybe are you brave enough to look at the landscape that's illuminated by that second fire?
And if you happen to see the eyes, say hello.
All right, listener, you're back now.
Exactly. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been a real pleasure.
And once again, if you want to go deeper, please support the source. Visit sethsender.com/Lee-Aurelie-sessions. Buy the books. Read the actual words. We're only scratching the surface here.
The books are where the real magic is.
Keep exploring the deep end, everyone. We'll see you the next session.
Good night.